let me ask you something. If I told you to describe your best friend's face right now, do you think you can do it? Their exact nose, their exact jawline, their exact teeth? Probably not, but if they walked into the room, you'd obviously recognize them instantly. Police sketches live in that gap, the space between description and recognition. And sometimes the world's worst drawing is the one that gets someone arrested. So before we get into these stories, I wanted to see if I could describe Kimber into an e-fit program myself and see what kind of results it would spit out. Now, I swear I did not look at an image of her, I just did this all from memory. I'm only showing an image up here as a reference for all of you. Typed in her face shape, her eyes, her nose, her lip shape, her hair, and of course, it wasn't detailed enough, so it asked for more information about lips and whatnot. But once I sent the information in, what it gave me was mind-blowing. I mean, look, it's uncanny. So then I wanted to see if Kimber could describe me. So I texted her, gave her the assignment, and she delivered her description, albeit without eyes. So I input the eyes myself, and I'm shocked. I mean, if y'all had to pick me out of a lineup by only using this portrait, I think most of you would succeed. That's pretty creepy. But anyways, let's get into these stories. Lancaster PD's simplified witness sketch went viral for one reason. It looked less like a police sketch and more like a doodle that you'd find on a sticky note that says, "Call Mom." February 2018, Lancaster police needed help identifying a man who stole cash from a market stand by impersonating an employee. The problem was, the only visual they had was a witness sketch that was so childlike and minimal, half the internet assumed that the department was trolling everyone. Lancaster PD basically had to come out and say, "Nope, this is real, we're not kidding," which is a sentence you never want to have a post under a drawing that looks like an oval with 2 dots and a hat. To be fair, they didn't just toss the doodle into the wild and hope for the best, they paired it with an actual description: short, petite male, black hair, pointed chin. And then this part is crazy. The sketch actually worked, because according to the police, the cartoonish drawing jogged the memory of a veteran officer who suggested a suspect by name. They put together a photo lineup, and the witness positively identified 44-year-old Hung Phuoc Nguyen, and the police got an arrest warrant. And within days, Nguyen was located and arrested on theft charges. Now, the internet had a field day with that sketch, and honestly, I get it. It's basically an oval face with dots for eyes. But after the arrest, even the skeptics had to admit, yeah, it wasn't really far off from the mugshot. Nguyen ultimately faced charges related to the market theft, 2 counts of unlawful taking, and was held on bail.
I was at market and I walked up to my favorite stand, and as I approached, there was a man who walked behind the counter, walked by, grabbed money, and then started walking away. And I said, "Wait a minute." He goes to bolt out the door, and a few of us try to stop him. I put my hands on him to stop him. You know, he was much more petite than I was. As people are sort of gathering, he runs away and gets out the door, and I subsequently call 911. I file the report, I go home, I'm all amped up, and I remembered something that my sister had told me a long time ago. One of the things she told me was that eyewitnesses are the worst, and they never remember details. If they call me back and and ask me to identify him, say they catch him, then I started drawing. I came home, picked up a Post-it note, and just drew his face and wrote down some details, to which this was my rough draft, and I'm like, well, that isn't really gonna fly. So then I refined the sketch, and this is what came out of it.
2 dots, a nose, a hat, and somehow the cop said, yeah, that'll do. We know who this is. That's like the artistic equivalent of, I can't explain it, but I'll know him when I see him. And then, because apparently the universe wanted a sequel, weeks later and 1,000 miles away in Paris, Texas, this sketch makes headlines because it is ridiculous. January 2014, 2 women in Paris, Texas are robbed at knife point. The Lamar County Sheriff's Department releases a composite. The drawing looks less like a suspect and more like a character who's about to ask Elmo for directions. The head is almost a perfect circle, the eyes are huge, and they're kind of empty, and it went viral. People called it the worst police sketch ever. And the sheriff basically had to jump in and say, no, seriously, this is real. An experienced artist drew this, which again is not something you want to have to clarify about your own evidence. But here's the twist. The sketch actually worked. A patrol officer recognized features and the crime details matching a local guy known to police. And just 2 weeks after the robbery, a 32-year-old man named Glenn Edwin Rundles is arrested. He was charged with aggravated robbery, among other offenses, and later convicted because of prior felonies. Rundles ended up getting life in prison for the robbery charge. So what started as an internet joke turned into a real arrest, proof that even the worst ever sketch can still get the job done. Alright, so this next one is proof that sometimes a police sketch doesn't need to be accurate, it just needs to have one unforgettable detail. This is the widely recognized police sketch of Joseph Weir, a suspect in a 2011 bank robbery and kidnapping in Kentucky. And if you're wondering what everyone fixated on immediately, it wasn't the hat and it wasn't the face shape, it wasn't the eyes, it was the teeth. I mean, look at these teeth. These are aggressively specific teeth. According to investigators, the composite was created by a forensic artist using a victim's description after the kidnapping and robbery. And when it came time to lock in the sketch, the artist clearly decided, I don't know his exact face, but I know what his teeth look like, and they leaned in hard. That sketch went public and instantly became memorable. Now here's the interesting part. Despite the sketch being everywhere, Weir wasn't caught right away for this crime. Instead, he was later arrested for a separate bank robbery. And once he was in custody, investigators were able to connect him back to the 2011 kidnapping and robbery. And at that point, everything clicked. Joseph Weir was ultimately convicted of kidnapping, armed bank robbery, and weapons charges and sentenced to nearly 60 years in prison. So yeah, that sketch looks ridiculous, but it did exactly what the police sketch is supposed to do and made one detail so unforgettable that when the right guy finally surfaced, there was no mistake it was him. And across the Atlantic, police sketches became memes, and even those carried consequences. So before we get into this absolutely absurd recreation, we need to talk about EFITs. An EFIT, short for Electronic Facial Identification Technique, is basically a computer-generated suspect face built from a witness's description. And the reasons EFIT exists is simple. Humans are terrible at describing faces. Right? Like I asked you at the beginning, like, do you think you could describe your best friend's nose? You'd be like, it's nose-shaped. Maybe it's slender, maybe it's pointy. But the weird part is that that same friend walked into the room, you would clearly recognize them. Even if they shaved, changed their hat, gained weight, whatever. So EFITs try to exploit that gap. Instead of asking a witness to become an artist, investigators use software that lets the witness build a face, like creating a character in a video game. The witness describes features, eyes, eyebrows, nose, mouth, hairline, and the computer stitches it all together. Then it generates slight variations and it keeps cycling them back to the witness, like, okay, so it's this face, or maybe it's this one, maybe it's this one. How about this one with the eyebrows slightly more guilty? And that idea is eventually like the witness is gonna go from one version and go, yeah, that's the person. That's the theory. And yeah, sometimes it works, but sometimes you get an EFIT that looks like it was assembled in the dark. Which brings us to this one. In April 2018, police in Warwickshire, England released an EFIT image that made everyone do a double take, including the police who posted it, because this wasn't one of those, it kind of looks like the guy if you squint composites. This thing had a grin so wide it looked like the Cheshire Cat tried to disguise himself as a human. Here's what police were actually investigating. On February 5th, 2018 in Stratford-upon-Avon, 2 men showed up and claimed that they were from Orbit Housing. They tricked their way into the flat, and while one of them distracted the victim, the other searched around the premises and stole some cash. So Warwickshire police posted an EFIT on social media asking for help identifying one suspect. And instantly, the internet does what the internet does. It turns it into a meme factory. People compared the face to Zippy from Rainbow, the Cheshire Cat, because the mouth is basically stretching from ear to ear like it's trying to escape his face. And this sketch got so viral that it started catching innocent bystanders. One guy named Richard Fox had friends blowing up his phone saying, "Bruv, that's you." So he posts a side-by-side and captions it sarcastically, "Looks nothing like me." And honestly, he was right. But the interaction blew up. Now, usually when the internet starts roasting police work, departments get defensive, but Warwickshire Police said, "Yeah, this is real. We anticipated the attention, but jokes aside, this is serious." They explained that the witness described an unusually wide mouth, and they were hoping all the attention would help identify the suspect faster. And at that time, this went public in April of 2018. Police were still trying to identify the man connected to the burglary. So yeah, this one lives on as a perfect example of the E-fit paradox. Sometimes the composite looks wrong, but it's memorable. And if it's memorable, it can get people talking, and sometimes that's exactly what investigators need. Alright, so after the Cheshire Cat grinning burglar, we've got an E-fit that doesn't go viral because it was creepy. It went viral because the suspect looked like it got attacked by a salad. Back in September of 2010, Hampshire police released an E-fit to try to identify a distraction burglar in Stockbridge. The allegation was a man conned his way into an elderly woman's home and stole 60 pounds from her handbag. So the witness described the suspect, and the E-fit program said, "Hold my beer." And honestly, I think the E-fit software might have had a few too many drinks, because when the image came out, the witness's description of wavy gray hair had been translated into this lime green, leafy looking mess. Plus, it looks like the guy has no ears. I mean, come on. So naturally, the internet does what it does, and the suspect is immediately christened Lettucehead. Now, to their credit, Hampshire police didn't pretend this looked normal. They basically said, "Yeah, the hair color is a technical glitch, but the facial features are clear, and we have a duty to release it rather than hold it back over something cosmetic." And they also clarified that they wouldn't release an E-fit that the victim disagreed with. And in that case, the victim actually supported publishing it. So even though everyone laughed, police were genuinely hoping someone would recognize that face and call it in. And sadly, despite the viral fame, reports suggest that the suspect wasn't immediately caught, which means that there is an absolute salad of a suspect still out there. Okay, real quick, I know I've been posting more darker, disturbing content on this channel. Let me know in the comments if you want this lighter content or if it should stick to the heavier stuff. Now, because we do laugh at these, the internet turns them into memes, so we compare them to cartoon characters. But behind every one of these drawings was a real crime. And behind every bad sketch was a witness trying to remember a face under stress. Police sketches don't exist to be art, they exist to trigger recognition. And sometimes, that's enough.